In a world filled with noise and constant distractions, finding peace and wisdom can feel nearly impossible. For those who are struggling to connect with themselves, with God, or with others, silence can seem like a forgotten art. But what if the key to true peace, emotional control, and deeper relationships lies not in speaking, but in the power of silence? In the Bible and the works of C.S. Lewis, silence is portrayed as a sacred tool, a pathway to spiritual clarity and inner strength. Through embracing silence, we can rediscover our connection with God's wisdom, find calm in our hearts, and foster more meaningful relationships with those around us. Today, let's explore how the power of silence can transform your life in ways words never could. In the Christian life, silence is far more than simply the absence of sound. It is a moment of deep spiritual encounter. Have you ever paused amidst the busyness of your day and felt God's gentle nudge? In 1 Kings 19:11-13, the prophet Elijah experienced this when God spoke not through the wind, earthquake, or fire, but through a gentle whisper. Could it be that God speaks most clearly to us when we quiet the chaos around us? Psalm 46:10 invites us to be still and know that I am God. What does it mean for you to be still in today's world? It's not just about being quiet, but about actively stopping our striving, letting go of control, and trusting in God's sovereignty. In that stillness, we create space to experience His peace and guidance. Even Jesus, during His trial in Matthew 27:12-14, remained silent amidst false accusations. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strength, trust, and purpose. How often do we try to defend ourselves when perhaps remaining silent would speak louder about our faith in God's plan? Isaiah 30:15. In quietness and trust is your strength. This is an affirmation that silence brings peace and trust in one's relationship with God. These examples from the Bible remind us that silence is sacred. It's a space where we not only connect with God, but also grow in trust and wisdom. When was the last time you embraced silence to truly hear His voice? Pause the video for 5 seconds. Truly relax, quiet your mind, and disconnect from the noise and thoughts surrounding you. Embrace the silence. After 5 seconds, I will share with you the secret that C.S. Lewis discovered. Silence is the doorway to the most sacred wisdom. C.S. Lewis believed that silence was not a void, but a gateway to divine understanding. The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis was first published in 1942. In the Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis beautifully illustrates how noise and distraction are powerful tools of the devil, preventing people from hearing God's voice. The enemy knows that when we are caught up in endless sounds, busyness, and the hustle of life, we lose the ability to reflect, to listen, and to connect with God. Lewis highlights how the devil encourages lost souls to immerse themselves in distractions, whether it be daily tasks, pointless arguments, or pursuits with no lasting value. Have you noticed how the noise in your life, whether from external sources or internal thoughts, keeps you from hearing God? C.S. Lewis emphasizes the danger of distraction in the Screwtape Letters through the words of Screwtape, an experienced demon guiding his nephew, Wormwood. Screwtape explains, noise is the grand dynamism, the audible expression of all that is exultant, ruthless, and virile. We will make the whole universe a noise. This statement reflects how the devil uses distractions, both external and internal, to keep people from focusing on God. Lewis further highlights this in a powerful line. The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. The suggestion here is that the gradual erosion of spiritual focus through constant busyness and trivial activities is more effective for the devil's purposes than overt evil. Distractions, whether they be mundane tasks, petty arguments, or meaningless activities, slowly pull people away from spiritual growth and their relationship with God. Thus, Lewis warns against allowing the noise of daily life to drown out the quiet yet profound voice of God. This idea resonates deeply with modern life, where technology and constant engagement can prevent moments of reflection and spiritual connection. For Lewis, silence was where the soul could truly encounter the divine. In letters to Malcolm, he reflects on prayer, sometimes encouraging us to speak less and listen more. We can look at letters to Malcolm, chiefly on prayer, where Lewis reflects on the nature of prayer and the importance of silence in our spiritual lives. Lewis suggests we must lay before him what is in us, not what ought to be in us, encouraging honesty in prayer. But he also emphasizes the importance of listening rather than always speaking. The prayer preceding all prayers is, "May it be the real I who speaks. May it be the real thou that I speak to." Lewis underscores that true communion with God often happens not through a flood of words, but through a quiet surrender and open heart that listens. He questions the tendency to fill our prayers with requests and concerns, when sometimes the greatest act of faith is to wait in silence, to listen for God's voice rather than our own. Silence allows space for divine guidance to penetrate our often chaotic minds. Lewis encourages us to reflect. When was the last time we allowed our prayers to be filled with silence, trusting that God speaks most powerfully in the quietness of our hearts? This invitation to embrace silence as part of prayer challenges us to experience a deeper connection with the divine, where words are secondary and listening becomes the pathway to spiritual growth. When was the last time your prayer was filled with silence, allowing God's guidance to fill your heart? After the passing of his wife, Lewis wrestled with God's silence in a grief observed. That silence, however, led him to deeper faith. We can examine Lewis's poignant reflections in the book. Following the death of his beloved wife, Joy Davidman, Lewis vividly described the profound sense of loss and the overwhelming silence he felt from God. "I knocked, and the door seemed to be bolted on the inside." Yet rather than perceiving this silence as complete abandonment, Lewis gradually realized that this silence was an essential part of his spiritual struggle, a divine invitation to reflect more deeply on his faith. He wrote, "When you are in pain, God may seem silent, but it is in these moments that he leads us into a deeper understanding of ourselves and of him." God's silence was not absence, but an opportunity for Lewis to confront his grief, to search, and ultimately to grow spiritually. He challenges us to ponder a profound question. What if God's silence isn't absence, but an invitation to wrestle, to reflect, and to grow? It is through these moments of silence and struggle that faith is forged, not in comfort, but in patience and endurance. Lewis reminds us that sometimes God's silence is his way of preparing us for greater lessons, inviting us to look inward and discover his presence in our most difficult moments. In both the Bible and Lewis's works, silence is not emptiness. It's an opportunity, a sacred moment where we learn, grow, and strengthen our relationship with God. When will you take the time to embrace this powerful tool of silence in your life? Practicing spiritual silence is not just about quieting our words, but also about calming our minds and hearts to make space for God to speak. Have you ever wondered when, in the busyness of life, you've truly allowed your heart to be still and let God guide you? Silence is an act of faith, a way of saying, "I am ready to listen," instead of always trying to be heard. In today's world where distractions are ever present, the practice of silence becomes even more crucial. Do you notice how social media, news, and entertainment fill our minds, drowning out the voice of God? Silence in this noisy world is a countercultural act. It invites us to step away from the noise, be present in the moment, and meet God in the quiet spaces. So how can we begin to practice spiritual silence? It can be as simple as contemplative prayer. Instead of filling our prayers with words, we sit in stillness, simply being with God. You can start by choosing a short phrase or word like, Lord, I trust in you, be still my soul, or God is here, and focus on it. Let your mind settle. Let go of the daily worries and just be with God in the silence. As you gradually immerse yourself in this sacred quiet, you'll find your heart opening to God's gentle presence in ways that go beyond what words can express. Silence holds a profound and transformative power, not only for our individual spiritual growth, but also for the deepening of our relationships with others. Proverbs 17:28 offers timeless wisdom. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. This verse underscores the importance of silence in times of conflict and tension. It suggests that silence, when practiced with intention, reflects a level of wisdom that surpasses mere words. But how can this principle of silence truly enrich our daily lives and relationships? In moments of heightened emotions, when arguments seem inevitable, silence provides a sacred space for reflection. Instead of reacting impulsively, silence gives us the opportunity to breathe, to step back, and to allow the initial wave of emotion to subside. This pause can prevent us from saying things we might later regret, creating room for a more thoughtful and compassionate response. When we take a moment of silence, we are not avoiding the problem, but allowing space for healing and clarity to emerge. Imagine a heated conversation with a spouse or a close friend. The natural instinct may be to defend yourself, to assert your perspective, or even to retaliate with sharp words. But by choosing silence, you allow both yourself and the other person the chance to process emotions without the added burden of more conflict. In these quiet moments, relationships often experience a shift from confrontation to connection. It's as if the silence speaks for itself, saying, I'm here, I'm listening. Let's find understanding. Practicing silence in everyday life requires patience and intentionality. One way to incorporate this practice is by consciously pausing before reacting in emotionally charged situations. Instead of responding immediately, ask yourself, will my words bring peace or fuel the fire? If the answer is unclear, allow silence to take its place. Another practical step is to set aside moments of silence throughout the day, whether during prayer, meditation, or simply in moments of stillness. These moments of quiet reflection not only center your spirit, but also strengthen your ability to practice silence in relationships. In silence, we create an atmosphere where others feel heard without judgment or interruption. And ultimately, we cultivate the wisdom to speak only when our words truly serve to uplift and heal. So the next time conflict arises, ask yourself, what could silence offer at this moment? Could it be the pathway to deeper understanding, to compassion, or to a more profound connection? The answer might just lie in the quiet space between words. In today's world, where conversations are often rushed or filled with noise, silence can be a gentle way to offer presence without pressure. Think about the times when simply sitting with a loved one, without the need for words, has brought comfort. Silence becomes a bridge that connects hearts. It allows us to experience a deeper, unspoken understanding, where we don't always need to speak to feel connected. Consider, for example, parenting. There are moments when children, in their frustration, need a loving presence more than words. By simply being silent, by being there without trying to fix things immediately, we give them the space to process their feelings. In doing so, we cultivate a deeper understanding of their needs, allowing us to respond with greater wisdom and compassion. I want to share with you a personal story, a lesson I've come to realize in the most important relationships in my life, with my wife and my closest friends. Sometimes silence has a magical power that words simply cannot replace. Have you ever experienced moments like this in your life? There was a time when my wife and I had a heated argument about a family matter, and at that moment, it felt like everything was spiraling out of control. Every word we said seemed to cut deeper, only hurting each other more. I could feel the anger building up inside me, like a fire that refused to die out. Every part of me wanted to react, to defend my position with sharp, cutting words. But then, in the midst of it all, I realized that if I continued, we would both fall deeper into a pit of damage that might be hard to recover from. That was the moment I chose silence. My heart screamed to speak, but I stopped myself, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. At first, the silence between us was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the air itself was pressing down on us. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my head, and I sensed her breathing, still fast and tense. But then slowly, something magical happened. The silence wasn't a barrier between us anymore. I could feel her heartbeat gradually calming, and mine followed. Her eyes softened, the anger dissipating. At that moment, I realized we didn't need to resolve everything right then and there. We just needed to sit together, quietly allowing the silence to soothe us both. I learned that sometimes silence can heal more than any hurried words ever could. By staying quiet, we gave each other space to listen to our hearts and allowed love to find its place again. Perhaps you've been in a similar situation where every word only made things worse. Have you ever tried silence, letting the quietness lead the way to healing instead of rushing into words spoken in anger? Silence holds a deep transformative power, especially in moments of pain and sorrow. It invites us into a sacred space where healing can unfold, not through our own striving, but through resting in God's presence. When we are faced with grief, loss, or emotional hardship, silence gives us the grace to sit with our pain, not to push it away or seek quick fixes, but to let healing take its course in God's perfect timing. Lamentations 3:26 tells us, "It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." In these words, we find a reminder that God's healing comes as we surrender to His will, trusting that even in the quiet, He is working for us. C.S. Lewis understood this truth deeply. In A Grief Observed, after the passing of his wife, Lewis reflected on the silence of God in his own suffering. At first, he wrestled with this silence, questioning, seeking answers. But in time, he realized that this quietness was not abandonment. It was an invitation to wrestle, to reflect, and ultimately to grow closer to God. Have you ever considered that God's silence in your own pain might be an invitation for deeper faith? Could it be that in the stillness, He is working a greater healing within you? In today's world, we are conditioned to always be productive, to keep moving, and to fix things quickly. But silence asks something different of us. It asks us to pause, to stop controlling, and to simply be. In the quiet, God reshapes our hearts, not through our understanding, but through our trust in Him. Next time you face hardship, consider what it would feel like to let go of the need to fix it, and instead sit quietly in the presence of God. What might He be teaching you in the silence? Could this be the space where His greatest healing takes place? When we learn to embrace silence as a path to healing, we give God room to work in ways we cannot see or comprehend. In this space of stillness, we let go of the need to have all the answers, trusting instead in His divine timing, His perfect plan, in His love that surpasses all understanding. How can we bring this powerful practice of silence into our everyday routines? One way is to set aside a few minutes each day for intentional silence. Whether it's in the early morning, before the busyness begins, or in the quiet evening hours, these moments of stillness allow us to quiet our minds and invite God's presence. We can simply be still, focus on our breath, and allow our hearts to open to the voice of God. Another simple yet powerful practice is to limit distractions. In a world filled with noise, phones, television, and constant notifications, Creating intentional spaces of quiet becomes essential. Perhaps turn off the TV or leave your phone aside for a while. In this space, you'll find that clarity, peace, and the voice of God can emerge. In relationships, practicing silence can be transformative. Next time you're in a disagreement or feeling tension, pause before reacting. Take a moment of silence to reflect, to breathe, and to ask for God's guidance. Often, this brief pause allows us to avoid saying things we might later regret, bringing more peace and understanding into our interactions. The power of silence, truly, is one of the most profound gifts we can embrace in our spiritual journey. In the quiet moments, we meet God, find space for healing, and begin to cultivate wisdom from the depths of our souls. C.S. Lewis gently reminds us that, although the world is full of distractions, it's in the silence that we hear the still, small voice of God. In a culture that often equates noise and busyness with significance, choosing silence becomes a beautiful and powerful act of faith. When we embrace moments of silence, we allow ourselves to enter deeper communion with God. In these sacred pauses, our relationships with others can grow richer, and clarity can emerge within the still waters of our hearts. Whether it's through contemplative prayer, moments of solitude, or simply holding our tongue in tense situations, silence offers us a precious retreat from the noise of the world, inviting us into the peace of God's presence. Let us actively seek the power of silence in our daily lives, trusting that in the quiet, God is at work, transforming our hearts, guiding us with his gentle hand, and drawing us closer to his divine love. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this time with us, discovering the profound power of silence. I hope this message has not only touched your soul, but also sparked a desire to welcome more stillness and peace into your life. If it has resonated with you, I encourage you to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. It's through your support that we can continue spreading this message of calm and connection. May God's peace fill your heart and bless you and those you hold dear. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Your support truly inspires us to keep creating content that uplifts, encourages, and brings hope to others.